featured speakers tonight are Congressman Kenny Marchant and Congressman Michael Burgess. And we're not going to spend a lot of time introducing them because you all know who they are, that's why you're here. But we do need to say thank you so much for coming. We appreciate you participating with us tonight. You want me to explain the process? Yeah, we have some questions prepared by the leadership, and I will be asking them. We're going to give each of you 2 minutes for your responses. Okay, our first question.
5 minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're supposed to each get 5 minutes for comments. My apologies. We'll start with you, Congressman Burgess.
That's great. Thank you. Well, thanks for letting me be here. I have 3 things that I just wanted to touch on. I may not even use the entire 5 minutes. Obviously, the Affordable Care Act, the President's takeover of our healthcare system, is something that I live with every single day. I want to also just mention a word about federal spending because I get a lot of letters from you on that issue. And let's be honest, 2 years ago, that was a thing that was topmost on everyone's mind. And then finally, let's finish up with a couple of comments on the Senate immigration bill. First, on the Affordable Care Act, we are coming up to a nexus. October 1st, the exchanges are supposed to be ready, but I got a newsflash for you. They aren't going to be. The administration is way behind where they said they were going to be on the implementation. And to be perfectly honest with you, I think October 1st, we are going to see just how desperately they're behind schedule. The thing is, the day before the federal government concludes the fiscal year. So all government funding will end at the end of September 30th. That is a logical pivot point for the question to be asked. If they've had 3.5 years and billions of dollars, and it's not going to work, why would we fund a penny more? Now, in July, the President said, for big business, you ain't got to do it. And just before we left down the beginning of August, he said members of Congress don't have to do it. So why in the world does everyone else have to do it if we're going to give big business a pass and we're going to give members of Congress a pass? The fact is that people don't want this. I've done town halls all over the district and healthcare roundtables all over the district last week, and I've heard repeatedly from you in no uncertain terms, don't do this. Now, let's just ask the question, can the United States House of Representatives defund an action of the executive branch? Well, it's happened before. Every time it's happened before, it has been a Democratic Congress that has unfunded a Republican executive's ideas. It happened during the Vietnam War with Richard Nixon. The Congress defunded the Vietnam War. It happened in Gerald Ford's administration when the Congress would not allow funding for Gerald Ford to go after the Khmer Rouge when they took over the Maya Dez. It happened during the Reagan administration when a congressman named Edward Boland introduced an amendment on an intelligence authorization bill that would not allow for any funding for the Contras fighting in Nicaragua. And of course, we all remember the result of that, the Iran-Contra affair. But the fact is, regardless of those politics, this is not an exotic mechanism by which the legislative branch exerts control over the executive. It is something that has happened at least 3 times in my lifetime that I'm aware of. What's different this time is it's a conservative House exerting that leverage over a very liberal president. And that is why the press is just in horror that this could occur. But the fact of the matter is, it may be the only tool in our toolbox as we cruise toward the end of, no pun intended, as we cruise toward the end of September. You got it. On the immigration bill, let me just say this. The bill that passed out of the Senate, in fact, is a tax bill that has an origination problem and has not arrived at the parliamentarian's desk in the House of Representatives last time I checked, which was last week. So what happens from here? First, let me say, for people on the Republican side who want to talk about the broken immigration system in this country, we have the most welcoming country on the face of the earth when it comes to taking in new citizens. 1 million people a year raise their right hand, take the oath of citizenship, and become United States citizens. That has been the case for every year that I have been in Congress, and in fact since 2002 when I ran for Congress. Before that I haven't kept track. That's 11 million people. Have you heard that figure? 11 million before. Well, exactly right. 11 million people since 2002 have been naturalized as citizens. What's broken about our immigration system? We don't enforce the laws on the border. In fact, the congressional activity to increase the number of border patrol, increase border fencing, has been in fact undone by the executive branch, both in fairness in the Bush administration and in the Obama administration. What about interior enforcement? It is virtually non-existent. And if we don't allow some type of employer verification, how can we expect them to play by the rules? And then the last thing I just want to mention is on the federal spending side, because I do get a lot of mail from you about that. A lot of you did not like the Budget Control Act of 2 years ago. You didn't like the fact that the debt limit was increased. But the fact of the matter remains, one of the things that it is my obligation to protect, number one, is to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. But the second thing that I am obligated to protect are the cuts that occurred under what's known as the sequester. 2 years ago, you said those cuts will never happen. Congress doesn't have the guts to do those cuts. It was tough, and to be perfectly honest, the Republican leadership delayed it by a couple of months at the beginning of this year, but they have occurred. They are making a difference. The federal government is overdrawn this year, but it's about by 1/2 of the amount it was 2 or 3 years ago. It is a step in the right direction. You don't turn a problem like that around overnight, but you do begin to realize your time is up. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
Well, thanks. Let me first extend a word of thanks to the Northeast Tarrant County Tea Party for hosting this forum. Probably you won't get this large a concentration of conservatives in North Texas in a long time, so thank you for being here. I'd like to say thank you to Gio and to Jonathan. I had a very successful freshman year in the Texas House, and I think that they were sent there to vote conservatively, and I know that they both voted conservatively and did a really good job. And I'd like to thank my colleague, Mr. Burgess. He and I are neighbors. We talk frequently on the House floor. He's the person that I rely on the most for anything that has to do with health care. So I really value our friendship. And I value the opportunity tonight to share with you our views and how we will vote and our positions on various statements. It's been a very challenging year for conservatives in America. Almost every day you open the newspaper or click on the internet, you find a new scandal. We started the year, almost a year ago, September 11th, we started with the slaughter of 4 Americans in Benghazi. And that day, the cover-up started. And the cover-up in Benghazi continues to this day. Shortly after that, and I believe if most Americans had known what really took place in Benghazi, the president wouldn't have been reelected. The president was reelected, and we started down the first day of his second term. And every day since the day he was sworn in, something new has happened. It started with the fiscal cliff vote, where the House basically ignored the pleas of their constituents and raised taxes. Then the Gang of Eight began to meet, and they came up with finally and passed not an comprehensive immigration bill, but a pro-amnesty bill. Anybody that reads it can see that it's a pro-amnesty bill. And then we began to see the trickling of the IRS scandal as it began to unravel. And the Northeast Tarrant County Tea Party group knows better than anybody in America how they were targeted by the IRS. And to their credit, they grabbed the best attorney in America, Jay Sekulow, and they did the smartest thing that could have ever been done. We believe that at the end of the day, the IRS will bring us to the Oval Office. We believe that the investigation will net in tracing us back to the Oval Office. And that's why we persist every day in our hearings and our questions. We have a challenging fall. The debt ceiling comes due again in November. In September, we have a CR, continuing resolution. And I'm sure there'll be at least 1 or 2 questions tonight about the continuing resolution and the need to defund Obamacare. One bright star for conservatives this year was that America has a new conservative star, a new conservative senator in the election schedule. Every Thursday, the Texas Republicans gather together and we get to have lunch and we get to share with each other what's happening in the House and the Senate. And believe me, since Ted has been introduced to the group and he comes to the lunches are much livelier. And we are anxious to serve you this fall. I brought with me today my email report, which I read every day, and I can tell you the things that I just mentioned to you are in every single email report that I get every day. I carry the email report around with me in the Capitol and on the House floor because we really are sincerely interested in how you think and how you want us to vote. Thank you. You want to keep seated when we answer the questions? Or?
That's entirely up to you. Chris, I don't think my mic is
Oh, sorry.
on.
Try it again.
Hello? Yeah, there we go. Okay, our first question, you've addressed it a little bit here in your opening remarks, but the subject is Obamacare, and the questions are for each of you. We'll start with you, Congressman Burgess. Regarding the Affordable Care Act and exemptions from participation, we understand that Congress, their staff, and possibly other federal employers will receive funds to offset the costs of participation or be completely exempted. What will you do to make sure that Congress and federal employers are subject to the same laws as the rest of us?
Well, this should never have happened, and the president issued that.
There you go.
Does that help? That's what the on switch is for. This should never have happened, and of course the president announced this right before everyone went out of town. We basically just got the information the same time you did. This is one of the first things that needs to be taken up when Congress comes back in September. This has to be undone. Nobody understands why they have to do this, but members of Congress are exempt or get a special deal. Look, I voted against the bill from the get-go. I thought it was poorly drafted, poorly drawn, and now we're understanding just exactly what that means. This is the dog ate my homework, so we turned in the rough draft. And that's basically what you got with rushing this thing through the Senate and then sending it over to the House. But this thing will have to be changed. It cannot stand. The employer's exemption from the employer mandate with not exempting the individual mandate also is one of those things that's going to have to be fixed. But the easiest way to fix it is to just undo the whole thing. And I would say the good news couched in this very radioactive aspect of making members of Congress different from everyone else in the country is let's use this as a slingshot to push us into a higher orbit to get this thing out from, get people out from under the thumb of the executive branch on this. The fact of the matter remains that we will do a bill that funds every aspect of the federal government, but except the implementation of the Affordable Care Act. If the president wants to shut the government down, that's on him, not on us.
If I could interrupt just 1 second, could we ask everyone to hold applause? I know you're enthusiastic, but it takes up precious time and we don't have a lot of that. So let's hold our applause till the end.
As Congressman Burgess said, we left town literally on Friday afternoon. This came out on Thursday afternoon. Not coincidentally, the president had been in the Capitol the day before, and the Democratic caucus and House members had raked him over the coals because they were going to have to live under the rules of Obamacare, and all along they believed that they were going to be exempt. So miraculously, within 24 hours, he prodded the acting director of the Office of Personnel Management to come out with some interim rules. So that's how this sequence took place. If you'll go on my e-newsletter, my website, you'll see the letter that I wrote last week to the acting director. basically pleading with her not to make any rules for Congress or their staffs that any other American didn't have to live by. So we hope this is repealed. My office will not accept any special treatment. Our staff will choose their insurance, and they will not receive a subsidy, and regardless of what the rest of Congress does.
Thank you. On the same topic, this question is to Congressman Burgess. The Graves bill would take care of these exemptions immediately by defunding Obamacare, and we would like to thank both of you for co-sponsoring that bill. We would also like to thank Congressman Marchant for signing the Meadows letter, pledging not to vote for any funding bills that include funding for Obamacare. Congressman Burgess, our question is to you. As of today, we understand that you have not signed the Meadows letter. Do you plan to sign the letter? And if not, please explain why.
Well, in fact, I don't know that I've actually seen the letter, but regardless, I co-sponsored the gentleman from Georgia's bill early in the month of July. I believe in the concept that he's put forward, and I'm fully prepared to execute accordingly.
Okay, we have a copy of the letter here tonight. If you'd like to read it, and perhaps
I'll pick it up as we're done. Thank you.
perhaps you'd like to sign it.
Well, as I understand it, the closeout for that letter was last week in July, and no one brought it to my, Mr. Meadows is, I appreciate what he's trying to do, but you really do have to make it known to the other members. You had 62 sign the letter, twice that number co-sponsor the bill. It seems to me like that was a pretty easy mark to get, but you have to make people aware of it.
Thank you. Our next topic is on the IRS scandal, and our question is to Congressman Marchant. We noticed on your website that you have recently proposed H.R. 2923, which requires the Internal Revenue Service to inform applicants seeking 501(c) status of their rights to seek a judgment if the IRS has not acted within 270 days. We appreciate you making this effort, especially since Northeast Tarrant Tea Party is one of the groups that is still waiting to hear the results of our application. And I lost my place. But we are more interested in what is being done to hold people accountable for unfairly targeting groups for their beliefs, which is clearly a violation of the Constitution. Please tell us what is being done to hold people accountable and to ensure that this does not happen in the future.
Thank you. The IRS scandal is being handled on two different fronts right now. Chairman Issa is having very public hearings. He's bringing all of the employees that will come forward to give testimony. The Ways and Means Committee is seeking all of the documents. We, as of last Friday, had received about 3% of the emails and pertinent documents in the case. We are trying to build a case. We are trying to build a case that traces back to the Secretary of the Treasury, which we believe will trace back to the President. Lois Lerner has pled the fifth, which means that she believes that she may have committed a criminal act. What we are looking for is not a quick fix on this, but we are looking for a permanent fix, and we are looking for how many people in the IRS actually committed a criminal act. And as my good friend Trey Gowdy from South Carolina says, he worked on some murder cases for 18 years. Well, I don't think that this one's going to take 18 years, but we are resisting. At this point, we continue to resist a special prosecutor because we are putting things in the public record every single day that if a special prosecutor, especially a friend of Eric Holder, somebody he went to law school with, that will take and bury this issue from the public. We are methodically trying to get these things out in the public and find out who made the decisions. Just Friday, if you'll look, there was a press report out about a employee that was just interviewed by the Ways and Means Committee that admitted that he still did not know what to do with an application when it came in. So thank you for the question.
Just a quick follow-up. Is there a reason that Lois Lerner has not been called back before these committees to testify after trying to get out of it with the Fifth Amendment?
Yeah, there's a decision has to be made about subpoena power and to whether to exercise it or not. She's also represented not only by council, but she is a member of probably the most powerful union in Washington, D.C., and it's a Treasury workers union. So when she's brought before us again, it'll have to be under subpoena.
We want her wearing an orange jumpsuit.
Amen.
Thank you.
Can I just add a
Yes, I
comment
was
to
just
that?
going to ask if you want to add to that.
You know, can't say that I was entirely in agreement to not do an outside special prosecutor. There are so many scandals going on right now that sometimes it seems like we need a scandal strategy to manage them all. And this is the one above all of the rest. And Benghazi wounds me personally. I go to bed every night thinking about that decision to stand down. But on the IRS, we all deal with it. None of us like it. But here's an agency of the federal government that has lost trust with the American people. I mean, if I were the president, I would want this agency cleared. I would want the investigation done for it to be thorough and above board and let the chips fall where they may, because this is the agency that, again, it interacts with all of us. None of us like it when they interact, but we must believe that they are above reproach. I appreciate the work the Ways and Means Committee is doing. I appreciate the work that Darrell Issa on Oversight and Government Reform are doing. Kenny is correct. There could be a delay if you go to a special prosecutor, but I do wonder if this is one that does need to be taken outside of the Congress. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next topic is the debt ceiling, and the question is for both of you. We'll start with Congressman Marchant. The fiscal year ends on September 30th, requiring another continuing resolution, and shortly after that, Congress will again be faced with the decision to raise the debt ceiling. Do you plan to vote to increase the debt ceiling, and if so, under what circumstances?
I would only vote to increase the debt ceiling if there is a significant cut in current spending. That's the only set of circumstances I would consider voting for it. The CR at the end of September is the continuing resolution that keeps the spending. And I'm not going to be willing to vote on it unless there is a defunding of Obamacare linked to it. Now, we do not know exactly when the federal government's going to run out of funds. We were told initially it was going to be April, then we were told May, and then we were told July. Now it's November. With the recent profits reported by Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, and with a very significant increase in cash flow that's coming into the Treasury, it wouldn't be surprising to me at all if they came back and said that the debt ceiling would be postponed in January or February. But I think there has to be a significant cut in spending linked to any debt ceiling increase, and a 10-year balanced budget.
Can you be specific on what you mean by significant?
I would say at least dollar for dollar, if not $2 to 1. $2 to 1 is my kind of guidepost. 1 to 1 is what the speaker has said. I'm not sure that we can get to it. My answer is inside the parameters of balancing the budget in 10 years. So Paul Ryan is the budget chairman. Paul Ryan is the one that's going to have to come up with that number that says if we do this, then we can arrive inside of the 10-year balanced budget number.
Again, on the continuing resolution that comes up in September, or an omnibus, whatever it's called, fund every other part of the federal government, pay the soldiers, pay the veterans. Don't fund another dime toward the implementation of Obamacare. Then if someone else wants to shut the government down, we'll talk about what their approach is. On the debt limit, and we discussed this in some detail 2 years ago. No, it's not something that I would willingly do again. However, just like Representative Marchant, I would consider, on this time, you almost have to have those dollar for dollar cuts come out of the entitlement side. No way in the world can more money come out of defense, no way in the world. Cutting the discretionary spending, it's been good for the balance of payments, but at the same time, if you're really going to be serious about turning the spending curve in the correct direction, it has to be on the entitlement side. So that would be what I will be watching in all of the negotiations that occur around the debt ceiling.
Thank you. Next topic is the farm and food stamps bill, and the question is to both of you. We'll start with Congressman Burgess, sorry. This is a long question, and I apologize, but it's important. Defeating and splitting the farm and food stamp bill was a Tea Party victory, but you both voted for the version that kept them tied together, which included keeping more than $700 billion in food stamps and maintaining the status quo of spending and price subsidies, even for farms with an adjusted gross income of over $1 million. Then you both supported the final bill as well, which turned all of these subsidies into a permanent Republican entitlement without removing the worst parts of the bill. Suppose in the presidential election in 2016, the Democrat candidate wants to use this specific bill to illustrate how he or she would cut spending and how Republicans are wasteful, crony, corporate spenders. Please defend your decision to create this permanent entitlement.
Well, let's be clear on a couple of things on the farm bill. The farm bill and the nutrition part have been tied together basically as a way to pass the farm bill with Democratic votes. Splitting them apart, not a bad idea, but on the original bill, it did cut the entitlement side of food stamps by $20 billion. All of these are 10-year figures, so when you say it's a $700 billion bill, correct, it's $70 billion a year over 10 years. That was the biggest cut to the food stamp program, and to my knowledge, that had been put forward really in forever. So was it a substantial cut? Sure. Was it as big a cut as you wanted? No, probably not. I think the ability to cut the food stamp program, though, I don't know what happens to that going forward. We'll have to see on what happens with the House bill going to the Senate and the conference committee. We may have had our high water mark at a $20 billion cut. I don't know. We'll see what comes back. On the farm side, I would say on the plus side, the fact that the farm bill has been in place for a long time makes you ask, is it really something that is still necessary? And the bill that passed most recently on the floor of the House did move toward a time where no longer would you have to pass a farm bill or immediately revert back to 1948 with the farm policy that was in effect at that time. Remember, all of the farm bills that have been passed since then have been a sort of a postponement of going back to the 1948 law. And so for that reason, I think this is a step toward getting out from under the farm bill in the future. So I have no trouble in supporting the presidential candidate in 2016. If they want to use the farm bill as an issue, I'll support them nevertheless and enthusiastically. Thank you.
I supported the splitting of the bill. Very rarely since I've been in Congress have I been able to vote for a bill that cut $40 billion out of current programs. And that's the opportunity I had to vote for the farm bill in the beginning. It cut $20 billion out of the food stamp program, and it cut $20 billion out of the farm program. I viewed that as a cut to government. When they separated it, I think it was separated mainly because of the influence of the Heritage Foundation and Heritage Action, and they did a very good job of framing that issue so that it would be supported by the Tea Party and most conservatives. I didn't get a single email asking me to not cut the food stamp program. So defending the farm program, it was a $20 billion cut. It shifted many of the programs to insurance programs, and as Congressman Burgess said, it was not the answer, a complete conservative answer, but it moved us into the direction of smaller government, and it made government more efficient, and that's why I voted for it.
Okay, our next topic is on amnesty, and you both touched on this as well. Questions to both of you, and we'll start with Congressman Marchant this time. The Senate recently passed a comprehensive immigration bill which includes some form of legal status or amnesty for illegal immigrants. Of course, to paraphrase our friend, former President Clinton, it kind of depends on what the meaning of the word amnesty is. So please tell us, how do you define amnesty in the context of immigration legislation, and do you support or oppose legal status of any kind for people who are currently in the country illegally?
I define amnesty as the rewarding in any way, shape, or form of someone that intentionally came to the country and broke our laws to get here. So that's the definition I use when I look at that issue. Do I support any kind of a pathway to citizenship? Do I support any kind of a legalization? I have not seen any bill that I could support yet out of the Senate or the House. The House has decided to do it in little mini bites, and while I do believe that's the right technique to do it, when I heard Senator Schumer last week, I believe it was last week, come out and say, I think that the House should go ahead and bring it over in small bites. That was a big red flag to me, that all the Senate wants is us to send a piece of paper with a caption and a signature, and Jonathan Geo knows what that means, over to hold a place so they can get the thing into a conference committee. That's why even if it's stepped up border security, and I've talked to Michael McCall about this, it's going to be very difficult. I don't think I could receive enough assurances by either leaderships to not believe that is the tactic on the immigration bill. I don't trust the process at this point.
I'll accept Representative Marchant's definition of amnesty. The Senate bill contained a provision for what was called a registered provisional immigrant, where everyone sort of overnight would be granted this new status. Stop and think for a minute. What would that do to the Affordable Care Act? Well, the President said no one in the Affordable Care Act could get coverage unless they were here legally, but now does that mean that they are? And suddenly have we blown the budget up with providing Obamacare to everyone who's received this new status? Or do they not receive it? In which case, they have an unfair competitive advantage with someone who is in this country legally, who by definition their employer has to provide them health insurance, and yet here you have a new group of people where the employer does not have to provide them health insurance. So realistically, they could have an unfair competitive advantage with people who are actually trying to do things the right way. The biggest problem is exactly as Kenny said, you send something over there and it comes back with something you never intended. And we already know we have a president who will enforce or not as his whim or direction, whichever way the wind is blowing when he wakes up that day. You cannot really trust this administration with any type of comprehensive legislation, let alone one which creates an entirely new class of visa.
Thank you. Just a quick follow-up to both of you, maybe almost a yes or no. Do you think with everything else going on at the moment, the scandals, the Obamacare, do you think that an immigration bill can actually be brought this year?
My short answer is no, but I know I've heard everything that I've seen on Drudge and coming out of the Washington papers is that it's going to come up in October. I don't see it happening.
I think a border security bill could get out of the House and could get into Rules Committee. At that point, it'll be under the venue of the Rules Committee. Very unlikely.
Okay, thank you. Our next topic is to both of you, and I believe we're with you, Congressman Burgess, to start. Over the past several months, we've seen all sorts of suspicious and scandalous activity, and we've already talked about that a little bit. Benghazi, IRS, NSA, etc. President Obama has referred to these as distractions, political posturing, and phony scandals. As conservatives, we feel that these stories should be kept in the news until resolved, but Republican leadership has shifted the media focus to topics like amnesty, which are divisive for the Republicans. What can you do as individual members of the House to keep these stories front and center and influence the Republican leadership to do the same?
Well, you've already heard my take on the Internal Revenue Service. I think as far as reestablishing the credibility of that agency, an outside independent investigation is warranted and advisable. Kenny and I, in fact, don't agree on that, which is okay. We don't have to agree on everything. His committee does have the jurisdiction for investigating it. I appreciate the fact that Chairman Camp is doing the work he is supposed to do. I appreciate that Darrell Issa and Oversight and Government Reform has now all of these new subpoenas out on both the IRS and Benghazi to the State Department, which have to be answered, I think, by the 16th of August. So that is good movement forward. Is it possible that creating a new level investigation would slow things down? Sure, it's a risk, and I understand why people are holding off. Look, I took to the House floor the day after Benghazi happened, and I said, this is 9/11 2.0. It requires the same investigative certitude that the first 9/11 Commission held, and we ought to appoint an independent commission to evaluate this and to investigate it, bring the charges as they may. The Accountability Review Board by the State Department was a joke. They brought up 4 people who they held as responsible. 1 retired, and the other 3 are still at work. And Hillary Clinton was not even questioned by the Accountability Review Board. Clearly, this is something that has not received the scrutiny that it deserves. I still favor an outside counsel. I supported Frank Wolf's effort to get a select committee for this, but at the present time, Darrell Issa, God bless him, if he hadn't pushed this, no one would be talking about it today. So we've got the subpoenas pending. Let's see where it goes at the end of this month.
I think the House could follow through, and I've advised the Speaker and the leadership that we should form this special Benghazi committee in the House. We should elevate the importance of it, at least at the House level. I think Dr. Burgess and I's disagreement on the outside counsel is more one of timing than de facto. I believe that it will end up there. The last 10 independent counsels have taken an average of between 2 and 3 years to reach their conclusions at a cost of between $10 and $12 million. So I don't think we have a large disagreement. I just think it's a timing issue. We as members of North Texas group of congressmen basically keep a lot of pressure on the leadership, from the whip to the majority leader to the speaker every day. Congress Burgess can remember the meetings that we used to have with George Bush about amnesty. They were not pretty meetings. Karl Rove was not happy with us, but we steadfastly told the president at that time, this is not an issue that the grassroots Republicans believe in. And I think that we're wasting a lot of time and energy, and it's a distraction that the Obama administration invites and is reveling in.
I think that what you just said is something the kind of thing we really want to hear more of. When you said we put pressure on the leadership every day or have conversations with them, we need to know that, because we wonder sometimes, what are you doing? We don't see you in the news enough, or other Republicans in the news. But
Just as a point of
we'd like to
clarification,
hear that.
I don't turn down any requests from the press. I mean, it just doesn't happen. In fact, I'm called promiscuous by the press.
All right, we're almost out of time, but I think we can get to a few more. This one is not so much a question, but it's a thank you for you, Representative Marchant. It says, thank you, Representative Marchant, for co-sponsoring the EACH bill for those of us who have issues with Obamacare, also based on our religious beliefs. Thank you.
Yes,
This is a question for Congressman Marchant. Why did you vote against a bill that would eliminate the OFE, Office of Fossil Energy, that could save $428 million? The OFE gives large subsidies to green initiatives. Even Obama wanted to eliminate this office.
The state of Texas is heavily dependent on the gas and oil business. That agency is very intricately involved in the Barnett Shale and in the entire gas and oil industry in Texas. And that's basically from the industry support. They were not in favor of abolishing the agency. We get to vote on about 200 or 300 bills or amendments like that every year. And from time to time, we don't always agree on those kind of things. But this specific agency is intricately involved in the explosion and the biggest job driver in Texas at this time.
Do you have anything you'd like to add, Congressman Burgess?
Well, first off, I don't know if Mr. Smitherman's still here, but he came to our committee and did an excellent job in explaining why Texas is a leader in why we're going to lead the country in being an energy exporter again. I assume this was a vote on an amendment on the energy appropriations bill. I don't actually remember the vote. Look, purity is a hard thing to get back, but sometimes you try. All of the efforts to subsidize activities, even some of those including oil and gas, I just took a hard position this time. I actually led the charge against the United States Enrichment Corporation, a uranium company in Kentucky and Ohio that has been propped up with subsidy after subsidy. It's like the Solyndra of nuclear energy. Of course, on my Committee on Energy and Commerce, we were ground zero for the fights on some of the Fisker and the solar Solyndra stuff. So it's been very, very difficult. This administration has done more than anything I can recall in the past toward picking winners and losers. Let's put this money toward our friends and try to harm our enemies. That as a policy is just not right, and so I kind of drew a line in the sand and said I'm done with it.
Thank you. Okay, this question is again on the topic of Obamacare. What are some of the alternatives to the Affordable Care Act that actually would save money, such as wired medical claims procedures, tort reform, insurance pools, political reimbursement tiers? What are your views on this subject?
Well, all of the above, and in fact, those of you who were paying attention in 2009, I mean, I had an entire website that was devoted to the alternatives to a federal government takeover of healthcare. Sure, start treating the person, the individual small group market the same as you treat a multi-state corporation under the tax code. Why do we punish someone who's trying to buy insurance for themselves or their family and make them spend after-tax dollars to do that? The whole concept of tort reform was one that I pushed very, very firmly during that entire discussion. What about selling insurance across state lines? What about allowing a political subdivision to band together and buy insurance just like a large corporation can? All of these things are valuable in their own right, but there's nothing that will save money quite the same way as expanding what are known as health savings accounts or medical savings accounts. I've had one since 1996. Mitch Daniels, who did this in the state of Indiana with his state employees with the Healthy Indiana program. He bought everyone, it was voluntary, but anyone who wanted it, he bought a high deductible health plan for them and then funded their health savings account up to the amount of their deductible. And what he found was something magic happens when people spend their own money for health care, even if it wasn't their own money to begin with. And his expenditures for health insurance in his state plan went down by 11% over 2 years, when every other aspect of health insurance in this country was going up 7 to 9%. HMO, PPO, Medicare, Medicaid, didn't matter. They were all going up. His went down, and went down dramatically.
I think the most significant thing we can do would be tort reform. In Texas, that was the #1 thing that drove down the costs for hospitals and doctors. Many of the solutions that Obamacare tries to get at are negated by the fact that the government is involved with it and the government mandates it. Many of the ideas of pooling, of efficiencies can be done in the private sector if the private sector is allowed to do them and incentivized to do them. So we should be approaching pools and big groups from a private enterprise standpoint instead of a government mandate standpoint. And tort reform. Tort reform would be the #1 thing that would bring the cost down.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question, and I'm going to take a little executive privilege and make it mine. Ever since President Obama took office, he has been doing things that circumvent the Constitution and run around Congress, are sometimes questionable. We all know what they are. I would like to know what can be done, what is being done to to stop this president from declaring himself an emperor instead of a president and put the man down.
Well, I think some of the investigations that you've heard referenced this evening are certainly movement in that direction. Again, I would prefer to see a special prosecutor on the IRS side. I'd love to see one on Benghazi, but I'll take what I can get at this point. But I believe both of those will reveal activities back at the executive office or back at the Oval Office that are clearly outside the bounds of what he is allowed to do under the Constitution. The other thing is, of course, the funding mechanism. And again, I addressed this in the opening remarks. This is not exotic. This is not something that, boy, it's never been done before, that the House of Representatives has pulled the purse strings so hard on the executive that they've had to stop what they're doing. What's exotic is that this is a Republican House. These are House conservatives that are talking about doing this on a Democratic liberal president. And that's why the press is saying, oh, this is something that's never been done before. It did happen. It happened to Ronald Reagan. It happened to Gerald Ford. It happened to Richard Nixon. I was too young during Eisenhower's administration to know. But these are techniques that are tried and true. They have worked in the past, and really, it is the only tool we have in the toolbox, especially in regards to something like the Affordable Care Act. All of the other aspects that are continuously brought up in all the other town halls and healthcare roundtables, sure, you push back legislatively every time that they push one direction, you push the other, because that's what our founders wanted. They did not want a ruler. They wanted a constitutional government, a representational republic, and that's what we are bound to protect. Thank you.
As simple as a birth certificate.
The first 2 years where Obama was the president, Nancy Pelosi was the speaker, and Harry Reid was the leader of the Senate, the federal government expanded by 30%. The base cost of the federal government was expanded by 30%. When the American people decided that they could no longer live with that arrangement and put the Republicans back in charge of the House, President Obama had nowhere to go to put his vision for America in place. So he began to rule and govern by executive order. And we have not come up with a mechanism yet to stop that executive order. There needs to be outside lawsuits filed that wind themselves through the Supreme Court. And ultimately, I believe that the purse and the pursuit of legal means, once we have absolute proof, is the only thing that will stop the president from this ruling by executive order. But it was brought about mainly by the fact that he does not have a House, and for all practical purposes, does not have a Senate that he can get most of its programs through now.
Talk to Sheriff Joe.
All right, our time is up. Again, we'd like to thank you so much for coming and sharing your evening with us. Now's the time for applause.